Welcome to the Feria TechCast. We'll bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Jeff Holman, a business-focused attorney, engineer, and entrepreneur who helps innovators navigate the complex intersection of technology, intellectual property, and business strategy. As the founder of Intellectual Strategies, Jeff brings a unique multidisciplinary perspective, blending technical engineering knowledge with legal expertise and business acumen. He developed the innovative fractional legal team model specifically designed for startups and scaling companies who need expert legal guidance without the overhead of a full-time legal department. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Ezekiel, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, so firstly, you're an engineer and an attorney, and you also have an MBA. So these are quite, different fields. So where did it all start from, and why did you decide to pivot, and how did you decide to pivot?
Oh, I really like school, clearly. So I've been to a lot of school, but I think I always wanted to be in business, and I just took the long road to get there, right? I did engineering first and worked as an engineer for a few years doing what we call power and lighting design. It's the most traditional type of electrical engineering you can do. Designing a building, where do the lights go, where do the plugs go, and how to get power into the building and around the building. I did that for a few years, knowing that I wanted to go into business, but got detoured a second time a little bit when a friend said, "Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a patent attorney? There are a lot of engineers going into law, helping inventors get patents on their inventions." And that sounded interesting. So I went to law school for a few years and worked as a patent attorney for about 10 years, almost exclusively. 10, might have been longer than that. It was a while. And then about 2014, I decided I wanted to really I like being in the law, but I wanted to incorporate more business aspects into what I do. So I decided to go back and get my Master of Business Administration degree and use that to ultimately create a law firm that is much more of a business focused law firm. And I say that because not only do we focus on helping our clients with their business legal needs, we also have designed and deliberately run our law firm more like a business than maybe what you would see in a traditional law firm model. So we help businesses, but we also run and operate our business like a business. So anyway, it's been a long path, kind of winding, but ultimately, I'm really happy with where I'm at. With the engineering degree, it helps me think systematically. With the law degree, I get to think about risks and opportunities. And then with the business degree, I get to kind of engage with my clients in their business rather than just talking about a legal problem that they have or a technical issue that they're dealing with. I get to really engage with the leadership in the business, and I find that that's a great mix for me to try to contribute at different levels with the people that I'm working with.
Wonderful. That's quite an amazing career and an amazing journey. Tell us, what does a fractional legal team actually do for a startup, and how is it different from just hiring a law firm?
Yeah, it's so a fractional legal team. The concept is we have designed a set of attorneys, a group of attorneys. I just talked with somebody else on a podcast, and they have a software development squad, he called it. So we're kind of like a squad, right? Like a football squad or a somebody. So we come in as your legal squad, your legal team, and we cover all of the different aspects of law that most startups and scaling companies need. So, if you think about it, people are starting a company. They have to form the company the right way. Maybe they're forming partnerships with the people that they're coming into business with so that everybody has the same expectations about who will contribute and what happens, how much will they own and what happens if they don't contribute, right? And then you have nobody starts a business just to have a business. You either are selling a service or a product. So in our case, we deal with a lot of innovative companies who might need to patent a new invention, a new product that they're bringing to market that they want to sell on Amazon or maybe, sell into an enterprise environment. So we help them get a patent. We help them protect their brand with trademarks, and we help them enter into all the contractual agreements with people. So there's just a series of legal tasks that companies need to do. And the real kind of inspiration for this was hiring one attorney to do all of those things isn't really a good approach. As a patent attorney, I'm really good at patents, but I might not be the best guy to do your fundraising documents. Now I've got a pretty broad knowledge myself, but still there are people who are better at it than me. And so I said, well, why don't I bring people in and we can have a team of attorneys? So when a business hires us, they can hire the team as a whole, and they can get the patent attorney when they need the patent attorney. They can get the general counsel or the contract attorney or the entity formation attorney or the fundraising or the trademark. Like, you get the right attorney at the right time for your business. And it's kind of like we're a built-in legal department for small businesses. So that's what we do. The way people hire us is they hire us on typically a fractional or a limited budget on a monthly budget, right? So people would say, well, I clearly don't, I'm just starting a business. I'm doing, $100,000 a year or $1 million a year or $5 million a year. Most of those businesses at that size, they don't need 5 or 6 or 10 full-time attorneys. They can't afford it. It wouldn't make sense, but they need all the different expertise at different times. So we brought the expertise and said, well, we'll be your attorneys, we'll be your team, but you just pay us on a fractional basis and you'll get us when you need us. If you need us a lot, we pay more per month. If you need us only a little, you pay less per month. So we essentially designed it so that we're really partners with the business. Now, that differs from other law firms in the sense that a lot of law firms could do what we do, but they don't. They're not built to do this. They're built to bill a lot of hours. They're built to kind of what I would call gatekeep the client work, right? The way that attorneys get paid in law firms is by bringing clients in and doing the work and spending their time helping the client, not necessarily by handing that work to other people or to bring a team in to help with it. So you get a lot of attorneys who are guarding the work. They say, hey, this is my client, don't touch them. Hey, I'm going to control everything that happens. And you get an attorney who might be really good at what they do, but they're not necessarily acting as the best partner for the business. They're acting in their own self-interest. And, we're trying to break down that barrier so that when companies hire us, they feel like they've hired partners that, as if you brought another founder on board to your team, as opposed to having to go to somebody who's, maybe got their own best interest in mind ahead of the interest of the company. So it's not that the expertise doesn't exist in law firms. It's that the business models that they use have different incentives. And so attorneys in other law firms aren't incentivized to work collaboratively with each other and with the business the same way that we do.
Sounds really great. So, tell us, Jeff, as an engineer yourself, what's the most common legal mistakes that you see first-time tech founders make?
So it's a great question, and it really varies depending on what they're doing. I'll give you two answers. One, really broadly, people don't write down enough information about the agreements that they're entering into. When you say, hey, Sarah, or hey, Joe, buddy, hey, Ezekiel, you and I start a business together. I like what you're doing. We work well together. Let's start a business. And then we say, yeah, great. Sounds good. Let's start a business. So we go form a company. We go, start to, I don't know, find a product that's made somewhere so we can sell it somewhere else. Or we decide that we're going to, go do landscaping, a landscaping business together, or we're going to, launch whatever business out there. But we don't write any of that down. We don't really talk about what our how much of the business do you own? How much of the business do I own? How do we pay ourselves if we pay ourselves? Who makes decisions in the business? Do you get to make the decisions? Do I get to make the decisions? Do we have to make them together? And we don't really talk through these types of things. And even if we talk through them, we don't write them down. So that's not a problem until you and I maybe have a difference of opinion. And I say, well, I really think that we shouldn't pay ourselves anything for the first year. And you're like, well, wait a second. I think it'd be great to get paid something. We're making money. Why wouldn't we pay ourselves something? And since we haven't decided and we haven't written it down, then we start to maybe, argue, or we have a little bit of differences, or maybe we even fight about it and we say, no, this isn't right. And I say, well, if you don't like what I do, I'm going to walk away. And you're like, but wait a second, you own half the business, and you can't just walk away because, you're not doing anything now. So you shouldn't get to keep the business. And so it's these types of things that are really easy to write down up front. You can talk about them, you can decide them, and you can write them down up front. And if you don't talk about them and make decisions and write those decisions down, you're almost guaranteed to run into problems down the road. So number one mistake that small businesses make is they don't write things down, right? They don't get to the point where they've made a decision that they can write something down. That's the number one most general issue. From there are some more specific issues that people make depending on what they do. But I would say that the most significant, maybe not the most common, but it's common enough, and it's probably the most significant, is founder disputes. When you have a team, 2 people, 3, 4, 5 people who come together, they want to work together. In fact, I've got a client who three women came together and they said, let's start this business. It's in the jewelry industry. And they did write everything down, but they wrote stuff down in a way that said, hey, every decision we make has to be unanimous. We won't make decisions unless we all agree. It sounds good, but what happens when one of the people says, I don't agree, right? I don't want to sell that product. I don't want us to pay money. I don't want to lease a building. I don't want to use that supplier. Okay, if you don't agree, if one person out of the 3 says, I don't agree, that one person can stall the entire business, right? And so this company, they're doing really, really well financially, but they've run into a founder problem. I won't call it a fight, although maybe at times it is that, right? It's a dispute, and they can't move forward formally because one of the individuals doesn't want to agree with the other 2. So that doesn't always happen, but when it does happen, it can really obstruct a business from making progress or even making decisions. And sometimes even successful businesses will just get shut down because of this issue, which is really unfortunate.
Wow, wow, that is interesting to know. So, does your technical background as an engineer help you in any way communicate better with founders or CEOs who are also tech innovators and need your service as a patent attorney?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think that in some situations it helps, and in other situations it might actually hurt a little bit. And I'll tell you why. Right? If I'm talking with a technical founder about a really technical issue, there's a good chance that we're going to speak the same language. I'm going to understand technically what they're talking about, and we might even talk the same way, right? If you've talked with, and I feel a little bit entitled here. I can say, if you've talked with an engineer, sometimes you see that engineers, they just think differently than a lot of business people, right? You're like,
Yeah.
maybe you're a little less social of an individual, more introverted. Maybe you speak, you use a lot of big words instead of just really easy words to understand. And so the mindset and the way you think is different. And so if I'm dealing with a technical founder, we might really connect really well because we can speak the same language. When I meet other business owners, though, who aren't necessarily technical founders, sometimes if I'm not careful and I just speak like an engineer, I'm not gonna connect very well with the owners. They're gonna be like, hey, I want you to help me sell stuff and make money. And you're talking about validating the technology and you're talking about why these protocols work this way. And, I don't care. I don't care why it works. If I'm selling it and I'm making money, that's what I want to focus on. Right. So I have to be really careful and aware of who I'm talking to. And sometimes I have to switch from my engineering, conversations to my lawyer conversations to my business person conversations because they're very different.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds interesting. So, tell us, what's one simple thing a founder can do this week to start protecting their intellectual property without spending a lot of money?
Oh, that's a really good question because intellectual property or IP can be really expensive. And it's also very speculative, meaning most of the time when you try to protect your inventions with patents or your brand with trademarks, you're doing it before that invention or that brand really has value. So you're saying, I'm going to go spend thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars to protect this, but I haven't even told the world about it yet. I don't know if anyone's going to buy it. I don't know if they're going to like it. I don't know if it's going to have any value someday. So it's an interesting, I think it can be very valuable, but it's also very speculative. So the success rate with IP is pretty low. Just because of that speculative nature. So your question is really good because as a founder starting a business, you can't just take $10,000 and, apply for a patent all the time without knowing if it's going to give you value. And you probably, in a lot of cases, shouldn't do that. You should take that money and validate your technology or validate your market or do something that moves a business forward more than, protects your invention. But the one thing that somebody could do pretty easily is to think about your brand. Your brand, whether you're a service business, a product business, whoever you are, a small business, a big business, if your company someday is going to have value, there's a really good chance that a lot of that value will be tied to your brand, meaning the name of your company or the name of your product or what is that branding element, your logo, what is it that people recognize? Why do they come to your business, Ezekiel, and buy from you? It's because they recognize you. They're looking for that product that has your name on it or that service that is your special way to provide that service. And so I think that every company out there should think about their branding and start to use that branding in a very specific way. So, think about, for example, I have like coaches call me or maybe podcast hosts and they'll say, hey, well, how can I start to, protect my IP? And I'm like, well, if I were you, if you're doing coaching or your podcast, if you have a specific way that you do it that's different than everybody else, the first thing I would just give that a name. I would say, well, this is the proprietary Ezekiel method for, launching a podcast, or this is my own special 6 steps to financial success framework for achieving XYZ in your business. And by naming it, by giving that method or that system a name, you're starting to create brand value. And maybe nobody knows to look for that today, but in 2 or 3 years down the road, if you've consistently called it by the same name and it has a unique name, it's not just like, hey, this is how you launch a podcast. It's like, no, here's Ezekiel's special method for blah, blah, blah. If it has a name, after a couple of years, people are going to start looking for that name. And that is where the value is. And then you can say, well, that's a trademark that I want. And maybe you have in different countries, trademark protection happens differently. In a lot of countries, there's kind of this, what we call in the US, common law trademark rights, meaning just because you're using it, the courts say, well, you should be entitled to some rights so people don't copy you because you came up with it and you're using it. That's not the best protection, but it's the least expensive to start, right? And if you want to get more protection, you can then register your trademark with the federal government. That costs some money and takes some time, but it's a lot stronger protection. But just by creating a brand around the thing you sell and using that brand consistently, you're probably starting to develop some value in your trademark and can eventually turn that into maybe even the most valuable piece of your entire business.
Amazing. So, could you tell us what does innovating with confidence actually look like on a day-to-day basis for a startup?
Oh, you've got my tagline, which is innovate with confidence. I have been using that for about 15 years now. It's something I came up with because if there's if there's a way, like I want to provide legal services to people, but I want to do more than that. I want to actually help people be confident as they move forward. Because, like I mentioned before, when you're doing IP or you're creating a new product or you're creating a new business, there are a lot of ways that can go wrong. And people get really afraid that it will go wrong. And they're afraid that they're going to be embarrassed, or they're afraid that they're going to lose money, or they're afraid that someone's going to steal their idea. So there are a lot of reasons why fear comes into play when you're innovating new things. And so my goal is in part, provide great legal services, but my goal is in part to help people have more confidence as they do it. I want people to feel like they've made informed decisions and that they can move forward confidently instead of with fear. And so this may sound a little silly, but what I've found with a lot of inventors and innovators I've worked with over the last 25 years is that fear, the ultimate problem with fear is that fear stops us from taking action, right? We're like, well, I don't want to lose money, so I don't take action. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want friends to say anything. I don't want someone to steal my idea, so I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm not saying, yeah, go spend a bunch of money that you don't have, or go put a bunch of money at risk that you really shouldn't, because your family can't afford it. I don't think that's not confidence. That might be dumb, right? That might be stupidity. But confidence is saying, hey, I can tell that I'm afraid of moving forward, and I need to find the right action that I can take so that I can get rid of a little bit of this fear. Maybe not all of it at once, but by taking a little bit of action, smart action, you can start to overcome that fear, right? So if I have a new product that I want to launch, let's say I want to sell a new uh, baby toy on Amazon. If I didn't know where to start, I would be like, well, I have no confidence that I can do this, so I'm just not going to do anything. But if I say to myself, well, I'm going to start doing a little bit of research. I'm going to start reaching out to people in the industry. I'm going to start listening to podcasts. I'm going to start connecting with experts who know these things. Like, all of those little actions help you build confidence towards your ultimate goal. That none of them individually necessarily are going to get you to having a product, on Amazon, but there's steps along the way. And there's so I view it as fear is the biggest obstacle that most innovators face. And there's different forms of fear, but fear generally is what they face. Fear, the result of fear is to not take action. And so really the only cure for fear is to take action. And by taking action, you're taking the things that you're afraid of out there in the future, like, what if this happens, or what if that happens? You're taking those things that could happen in the future, and when you take action, you bring those things to the present. And now by taking action, you know what the result is. You don't have to be afraid that XYZ is going to happen in the future. You already know what's going to happen because you just did it. And so fear is all future based, confidence is all present based. And so you take action to bring the future into the present and turn fear into confidence. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's wonderful. So you've said a few things about fear and also how taking action can uh, help alleviate fear. But uh, you also like sometimes talk about the four fears of every innovator. I'd like to tell us what are the four fears of every innovator that you've identified, and how can someone recognize them in themselves?
Yeah. So I think there are different types of fear, and I've called them the four fears again because I think there's power in branding, right? And you might come up with other fears too, but they really fall into categories. A lot of times we're afraid of, like, and this is for innovators in particular, people who have an idea, but they're afraid to bring that out into the public. So a lot of times you're afraid of loss. You're afraid that you're going to lose lose something in that. You're going to lose money, or you're going to lose respect, something like that, right? So there's a fear of loss that can happen. There's a fear of theft, which is another form of loss, but it kind of is the action of somebody else stealing it from you instead of you just losing it. So fear of theft. And so it's like, and this happens to many, many inventors. I'd say half the inventors or more that I talk to, they're all afraid of their idea being stolen. Like, hey, I can't, I don't know what to do, because if I tell anybody about it, they're going to want to steal it, and then I can't do it, and then they're going to make money and I'm not. So fear of theft is the most common for anybody, right? And then one that might be surprising is the fear of success. Some people are really afraid that, hey, and I've talked to these people, it's not as common, but they're like, if this works, like if I prove that people want to buy this product, like I'm going to have to then like be dedicated to this. I'm going to have to start a business. I'm going to have to put money into it. And I'm going to have to like that's a lot of responsibility. I'm not sure that I really want to commit to all of that if I'm successful, right? If I do this and it's successful, I don't think I want to do the next thing. And there might be reasons for that. A lot of, I have like, just to maybe generalize on stereotype a little bit, although that don't mean to do that in a negative way, but people with families, parents who have children, moms and dads who are like, I had this great idea, but I don't really want to change what I'm doing. I don't want to, like, if I do this and it goes well, I don't really want to disrupt the lifestyle that I have. I don't want to have to, work more on a business that will take me away from my kids, for example. So I call that a fear of success. Like, you're kind of afraid that if this works, that you might have more responsibility than you want. There's a book about that. What was it called? It talks about your zone of genius. It's like the big game or something like that. It's on one of my bookshelves back here. But the concept is that when you are headed towards either failure or success, you have an internal thermostat, they call it, right? And you'll be like, oh, this is failure. I'm going to get back to where I'm comfortable. And the same thing happens when you're like, oh, I'm like, this could be really big. This could be a lot of success. And that feels kind of overwhelming. So I want to get back to where I'm comfortable, right? And so fear of loss and theft are kind of those downward failures that you try to avoid. And fear of success is the upward success that you're like, this I'm not comfortable. I don't know how to handle that. So I'm going to avoid that. Was that 3 or 4? I don't remember how many I've listed, but there that might have covered them for the fears. What was the other half of your question?
Okay. How can founders or innovators recognize this fear in
That's
themselves
right.
and also conquer these fears, of course?
Yeah. So I think it comes back to what I mentioned before about taking action. I think and I think this is true for all types of fear. When you find yourself stuck, the question that I would ask myself is, am I stuck and now going to take action to get unstuck? Or am I stuck and now I'm going to not take action? If the answer is, I don't really want to take action, that's probably an indication that fear is getting in the way of innovation. That's how I would frame it.
Interesting. That's a great one there. So, tell us, how do I put this question? When should a founder start thinking about legal strategies? Is it on day one or after they have some traction?
Another great question. You've got a lot of really good questions. So I view business this way. There are 3 parts to every business, right? One is in new businesses, like a startup business. The first one, you have to validate that your technology works. Now, I say technology really broadly. That could be a new product, that could be a service. Like the thing that you're going to sell, you need to validate that it actually works. For somebody like me, I'm a lawyer. Like, I know that legal services work. So there's not a lot of testing there, right? But if I was creating a new type of air filter product for vehicles, and I said, I want to sell this into the vehicle market, like, I need to make sure that the air filter product that I'm thinking works actually works. Because if it doesn't actually work, I've got a big problem, right? So I have to validate the technology that it will work. And some types of things require more validation than others. And then I need to validate the market. Will somebody buy this at a price point that makes sense? that, it's high enough that I can pay to get it made, and it's high enough that there's a margin that I can take home, right? Again, for something like a service-based business or we mentioned landscapers before. Can I make enough money landscaping, mowing someone's lawn, weeding someone's garden, helping with something around their yard? Can I make enough money that it will cover my costs for my equipment and my fuel and travel time, and then can I still make enough money to take home after all of my costs? So validating the market is maybe the most important one, and validating your technology is also very important. Legal comes into the third leg there. So the third one is what I call freedom to operate your business. So freedom to operate your business means if I start this business, if my technology works and people will buy it, do I actually have the rights to go out and do that? Or is there a chance that maybe I'm infringing somebody else's rights? And can I protect my rights so that I can continue to do that? Can I run the business in a way that actually, is operationally stable? So it's not just legal, but it's like legal and financial and the other kind of foundational pieces in your business. Do those all work properly so you can run a business that sells the technology you validated to the market that you validate? So that's how I view legal. So with that context, to get back to your question, when should a founder start? Well, a founder should really start doing all three of those as soon as possible. In reality, most founders, depending on who they are, if they're business oriented, they like to get into the marketing. Hey, I'm going to sell this thing, and they talk about sales all the time. That's the market factor. If they're innovators and not necessarily salespeople, they'll talk about the technology. I got this cool invention. I created something. I don't know how to sell it yet, but I really think I should develop this because it's new and nobody else is doing it. So people will focus on the technology or they'll focus on the sales. And what they need to do is balance those out so that you have, each of those should kind of be going up uh, in balance, and not just, sales, but your technology doesn't work, or a bunch of legal work, but you can't sell your product. Like, you need to balance out the technology, the market factor, and then the freedom to operate factors, including legal.
That's wonderful and clearly outlined. So tell us, what's a legal hack that second-time founders know that first-time founders usually do not know?
There are lots of legal hacks. I like to talk to my clients about acting like second time founders. I think the biggest hack that anybody could do as a first time founder that makes them feel like a second time founder and makes them, you know, more confident and helps them avoid legal problems is to build a network around you. First time founders oftentimes are a little hesitant to go out and find mentors and talk to people who have done the same thing that they're trying to do, because they're like, oh, they're my competitor. I don't want to talk to them. They'll steal my idea, right? The fear gets in the way. And so what they really should be doing is saying, hey, if I'm going to build a new restaurant, I should go out and talk to every restaurant owner I know because they have been down that path. They know where the problems are. They know exactly how I'm going to screw up my business as a first time founder. And if I can talk to 5 or 10 of those people, I'm probably going to learn the mistakes that they made that I don't have to make if I have the right network around me. So biggest hack isn't even a legal hack. It's just simply getting the right people around you and being really, really, really open to talking to them about your situation and what you can learn from them that they wish they had known before.
Amazing. So tell us, how do you help founders align their IP strategy with their actual business goals? Not just check a legal box, understand, to align things with the business in general.
Yeah, so it comes back to those 3 factors I mentioned, right? It's you really some people and I've worked for small companies and I've worked for really big companies that don't necessarily have I don't think they have an IP strategy. If it's a small inventor, they say, "Hey, I've got this really cool idea. I don't know how to make it money from it, but I want to get a patent." And I'm like, That's a really expensive trophy that you're going to buy. And if you don't know how to make money from it, the trophy, the patent will just sit on your shelf and won't be valuable to you, which means it's not strategically aligned with your business. And I've also worked with really, really large companies, and they have a different mentality, and they're just like, get as many patents as you can. And some of them, just because we have thousands, some of them will be really important and the rest of them won't. We don't know which ones. And, and so they spend, they don't know this because they don't know how to necessarily figure out which ones will be important in 5 years from now. And so they just spend, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on their patents without knowing how to predict which ones are the most important ones. And so in both of those situations, whether it's a small inventor working on their very first invention, or whether it's a really large global corporation who just is statistically trying to build a portfolio that has enough value that it covers the cost eventually of the rest of the portfolio. Like I think there are tools that you can use. I have a framework that I call the 5-factor framework for business strategy, where we talk about how do you align your IP assets, your intellectual property, patents, trademarks. How do you align that with your business objectives, your business, I call it business leadership objectives. Do I want to be a price leader or market leader? How do I align that so that there's a sustainable advantage, in my market with that leadership objective? And so, but for now on this, in our discussion, I think if you think of it as you have to have your technology and your market and your freedom to operate all in balance, that's when you know that you're being strategic. If it gets out of balance, like I said before, if somebody is spending tens of thousands of dollars getting a patent and they can't prove that their technology works and they can't show that anyone's going to buy it, that's a misalignment. And it's an expensive mistake that people could avoid if they thought about keeping those in balance.
Interesting. That's well articulated. I mean, you really do have a framework for everything. That's really amazing. So finally, Jeff, I have one more question, which I normally like to ask every guest I interview here on this show. So tell us, what does innovation mean to you, and how does it relate to your work, your field? I mean, as an engineer, patent attorney, I like to actually hear the meaning of the word innovation from your own perspective.
That is a really tough question, because I spent like a year or 2 years of my own, maybe 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. And I was like, what is innovation? And this is when this led me down the whole path to talking about IP strategy, to going to get my MBA, to working inside a company. And then really led me to restarting my law firm the way that I do it today with a fractional legal team. So this question is the beginning of that whole journey from the last maybe 12 to 15 years. So innovation
Wow.
to me, here's how I would define it. And this people have different opinions about it, but I think innovation is coming up with a new way to deploy something, to use something in your business. And it might be a new thing, it might be an old thing, but it's a new way to use something in your business that gives you an advantage. And so a lot of times people just think about inventions as innovation, like, well, I created this new thing, this new computer, this new tool, this new, product, whatever it is. And they think, well, that's innovation. Well, innovation could be, how do I apply, even normal old thought processes in a new way? And the key to innovation, in my opinion, is application. You can't just create an invention and not apply it somehow. If I just create a new tool for how to smell whether or not there are honeybees outside of my house. Like, if I don't have a way to use that, to apply that, to turn that into revenue, then there's not really, like, it's cool. Maybe like I can sit in my house and I can, use my app on my phone and be like, I think there are honeybees outside. Like, I don't know what I would do with that. So I would call that an invention. But if I could turn that into, this app now has an application where it I can use it in my business to drive revenue, to build customers, to create some advantage in my business. that application then turns an invention into innovation in my mind.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's really amazing. So, finally, tell us, Jeff, where can our listeners find you, or get to book a strategy call, or get to generally just learn more about your work?
Yeah, I love connecting with people, especially innovators and inventors and people that are scaling cool businesses. So I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn. My face is up there and it says something about building fractional legal teams. If you see that profile, that's me. I'm the only one doing that. So I connect on LinkedIn, but also on our website, people can get on there if they think they might want to be a client. I do a free 30-minute strategy call with a lot of people where we'll talk about all these types of things. We'll talk about what your business is doing. We'll talk about some of the mistakes that maybe have happened already in the business and maybe how to fix those. We'll talk about the mistakes that could happen that are coming up and the way to kind of start to roadmap out your legal tasks with the business milestones that you have that are coming up in your business. So I do those strategy calls weekly. I do them sometimes daily. So I love talking with cool inventors and cool innovators and CEOs who are working on cool projects, and happy to do that. So people can go to my website. It's intellectualstrategies.com, and there are links on there to book a strategy call with me.
Amazing. So, Jeff, it's been a really wonderful conversation with you, and I'm really excited to have you on the Ferret Cast today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Been my pleasure speaking with you.